All right, we're live. There you go.
With Diggy Dog and the Much of a Call It Bunch.
My God.
So I just spent um, 3 hours watching this dude. He's fishing all these spillways, and he's dropping chunks of frozen bluegill and sunfish on. It's like a it's like a shark hook. It's like a shark fishing hook, and he's throwing at the end of these spillways, and he's pulling these monstrosities out of the spillway. And I'm sitting here thinking like, oh, I got to get out in the water. I got to get out in the water, like, and just try to throw stuff down and pull out some dinner, freeze it. They say if you put a fillet in a Ziploc and fill it with water, and then freeze it, you don't get freezer burn. So it lasts like another 6 months longer than it normally would.
Yeah, but if you get a vacuum sealer and suck all the air out of it, you could store that shit for 2, 3 years.
Have you done it?
Oh yeah, dude. My
Have you
brother.
tried the frozen ice thing though?
No.
Because it surrounds it, Matt. Like that that layer of plastic is almost. I mean, and we could argue this.
No, no. I get what you're saying.
I'm
My
just
only
wondering
question would
about
be, they
because if you
tell
have
you.
that much water in between that plastic, it would be so hard for that freezer bird to penetrate a block of ice.
Well, and I agree. The only question is, um, what is it doing to the meat, because they tell you not to rinse that stuff before you use it. So what's
Your
soaking it in
like
water going to
trout
do?
and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you can do it with, like, if you look at most of the stuff they talk about when cooking that, you don't
Bro.
ever rinse it.
Oh, the fuck you don't. I dude, I wasn't trout fisherman when they got kicked. When I get kicked to the curb in 16, I fished my ass off, and we brought home so many fish. Like one day, we were both limited out in trout, driving them home, going back, limited again, driving back. Next day, I'm at the lake and I'm pulling all these crappie in. I'm just, I'm killing it every day. When you take those trout, even the way that we froze them was just in just bags with a little bit of water. When you take those out and you just throw that whole bag in like cold tap water
Right,
because you don't want to change that temperature too rapidly.
right.
When you take those things out, that skin, for whatever reason, it just keeps on putting out that slime, that whatever, that protection layer, no matter what. Even after, I mean, I've had them in there for 6 months at least, and it never goes away.
Well, let
Now,
me ask you,
on
when
the
you're cooking
inside,
it, are you cooking it with the skin still on it?
yeah, when we take our trout home, we snip it,
Mm-hmm.
rip it, gut it, and get that black stuff out of the
Yep.
spine there. And then if we're gonna cook them, we leave heads on, right? And then we've actually used the oven, but we froze a lot of them. But so most of the time, if we go and we do well, we're coming home. We're gonna cook a couple of them,
Yeah.
and I throw um, lemon slices, onion slices, garlic salt, and then I dill weed the whole top and like squirt lemon over top of it. Throw it
Yep.
in for I don't know. I like to do low heat, dude. I really do.
What is? I get it. Yeah.
Um, so I was thinking about that a lot, and then I started thinking about hunting also because I started watching
The new
Ranello's.
season of Meat Eater.
Yeah, and it makes me like realize like the things that I do. I gotta, come to terms with some other things and try to like clean up my act a little bit. And I should be out there, you know,
Yes, you
from
should.
4:30 till 7 o'clock, seeing if I can't put an arrow in a heart.
Uh,
But
I agree.
a lot of that stuff comes to mind though, from before when I said, like I stopped hunting because I just didn't want to kill anything anymore. You know,
Yeah, but it tastes delicious.
I know, just I don't know, something weird. Like nobody put me here to kill things. They trained me
Really?
to do it.
If the
Well,
if the shit hits the fan, you're gonna have to feed yourself.
yeah. Well, I think it's yeah. You're right. You're right. There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt about it at all.
And to that end, let me tell you what the hell happened to us this weekend.
So
So
today's Tuesday night.
yeah, so Saturday, it rained in the morning. It was cool for the first time up here in a while. So I figured I'd take the dog up to the mountains, let her go hunt a little bit, see if she can run across any squirrels or anything like that. So we go up to Pine Mountain, it's about an hour north of here, and we get parked. We start out on the trail. We're probably about a half a mile into the woods. Sign everywhere, dude. I mean, there were deer tracks everywhere. There were turkey tracks. I actually took a video of the turkey tracks. There were so many of them, and the one track of this one bird was literally the size of my hand. So this bird's got to be huge. So we're walking through. It's pretty
Turkey.
heavily, yeah.
Oh wow.
It's really heavily wooded where we were, and one side is all hardwoods, and then it's kind of like a creek bed, and the other side is all pines, and it's young pines. So they're like 12, 13 feet tall, like really, really brushy, really, really bright green, and they're packed on top of each other, so you can't see through them really well. So dog's about 20 feet ahead of me, walking up this ridge line, like between where the creek bed is and the hardwoods, and then the pines are on my right hand side. And as we start walking in, I hear a snort from the pines, and I'm like, oh, there's a buck in there. And I can hear like something hitting the ground. So I'm standing there and I'm trying to figure out how far in it is. And the snort's pretty loud. And I'm like, oh yeah, man. So the dog actually froze immediately and turned and pointed right into the pines. And I'm like, all right. So I stood there for a second and I can still hear this thing breathing. And I take one more step forward and start snorting again. And I can hear it moving around. I'm like, that thing's going to come out. And so I'm kind of being still, and it sounds like it's moving. So I take a couple of steps back to give myself some distance from the pines. I hear one more snort, and the dog starts growling. And as she starts growling, I hear, I'm like, oh shit. I look over, and a black bear cub comes running out of the pines, crosses the path that we're on right between me and the dog. The dog spins and sees that. The cub goes straight off, and not 10 feet behind her is the sow. And the sow comes out about 20, 25 feet beyond the dog, hits the path that we're on. You can see it's running for the cub, sees us, and stops. I'm like, oh, shit. All I had with me was the 22 because it was like a really rushed trip. So I wasn't
Is
carrying my
this is
chest
this
holster.
North is this North Georgia?
Yeah, probably 200, 250 pound sow black. I'm like, son of a bitch. It
Dude.
stops, turns towards us, and I pull the 22 up, figuring I may have to crack around into the air or something.
About
And
like 25 of them.
I know, I start yelling. It starts charging us. I am shitting. The dog starts going crazy and like does the lunge towards it, and it stops about 15 feet away from the dog and then turns and just peels off the path and takes off. So I went to, I'm literally, I mean, my voice was probably about 5 octaves higher than it is right now, and my heart was just, I'm looking at the dog. So keep in mind, the reason I'm telling you this is that is the third bear incident I have had with the dog, and she is less than a year old. This dog is a goddamn bear magnet.
No, she's not a magnet. That shit is just coincidental. The dog is what is keeping your ass
Oh,
safe.
tell me about it.
Bear do not like dogs at
At
all.
all.
At all.
Yep.
No, hands down. It's I think it's something that's ingrained in their DNA from the days of all them
The
coyotes and
pack. Yeah.
huskies and the pack wolves and all that
Wool.
shit.
Yep.
They don't they know don't because they have in their brains, I think. This is my gut. Fuck everybody, I don't give a fuck. That pack mentality can push you away.
Yep. Well, and I think the whole thing is they see the one dog and they're waiting for the rest of the pack. Where they coming from? Yeah. But I'll tell
They're
you what.
taught from a young age. DD Mao, motherfucker.
Exactly. I said with my luck though, I have seen three bears over the course of now it's been about 8 months, and I mean all good size black bears. Sure as shit, I'll guarantee you when season opens up, I won't see one.
Well, and this goes to everybody's plight now about this whole hunting thing. This shit needs to happen because if not, I mean, I'm torn. I'm torn. It needs to happen for a lot of reasons. It's not going to over happen for many other reasons. However, we're infringing upon their territory. They're not infringing upon ours. The
Right.
reason that the populations are so high and so dense is because we keep taking away from their natural
Yep.
habitat.
Agreed.
So we can sit here and so many people can sit and argue and say, oh, well, without hunting, these guys are going to be in your backyard. Well, of course they are, because you people have moved to a certain city to make a lot of money, and now all of a sudden you're like, fuck this place, I'm going to go and buy 4,000 acres in Arizona.
Right.
And so what do? Now you could bring all your friends out there to hunt on your ranch.
Ranch.
So you drive everything further out of that area where they were naturally living in peace and harmony. But don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that everybody has that ignorant mentality to just, abuse the land, because a lot of these people that I'm not referencing, they have that mentality about thinning the herd properly, from your
Yeah.
dominant alpha males, so that a lot of the younger bucks can come up and keep the gene pool strong, and that produces better meat, produces better animals, produces better herd, you know. But a lot of people aren't doing that, dude,
Yeah.
because there's money in it too.
Well, and that's what I found to be crazy is I've been looking at, so I looked at a land lease here in Georgia to get on a hunting property and just do a lease for a year. The cheapest one I could find that does whitetail, turkey, upland birds, waterfowl, and hogs will run me somewhere around 3,000 a year. Considering that's not that bad, and the reason I say that is I just looked at doing a combination hog and whitetail hunt in Texas. And if I go down there for 3 days, depending on what you're going for, it's going to run me 2 grand between lodging and all the other shit to go down there and hunt for, 3, 4 days. Why
So
not
my
just,
question to you on that is, if you leased a ranch, does that negate that you would have to have tags and out of state license permits, etc.?
well, in Georgia, so no. So what would happen
If you
here,
lease the property, you're free to do what you want on that property.
right? Yeah, as long as I've got my license, that's all that matters at
So
that
there's
point in time.
another 700, 900 bucks.
No, 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 no. I'm talking
No, I'm
about for
saying if,
Georgia.
oh,
Oh,
oh, oh, oh,
I'm
oh,
talking
yeah.
about in Georgia. I mean, my Georgia license for everything was like $100 maybe, and I've got like my duck stamp and additional shit over and above. Like a normal Georgia sportsman's license for everything is like $60 a year. So, but I mean, most of these places here, like some of the ranches that we have here, the nice thing is they're not fenced. So you're not dealing with a high fence ranch because I don't feel that that's sporting to begin with when you got them fenced in. The
Uh,
abundance of hogs here, especially South Georgia, like down in the swamps, is absolutely insane.
there's a lot of criticism about the hogs down in the south about
It's
whether or not it's ethical, but they don't, people don't realize how many there are, and they're
first off, people that have never been around those things think we're talking about Charlotte's Web. It ain't Charlotte's Web, baby. These
no,
pigs are.
no, yeah, no, I know, they're they're bad, they're ill-mannered animals, and that's what a lot of people don't understand. The bigger problem is how rapid they reproduce, and
I think
it's
it's every 3 months, 3 or 4
yeah,
months.
and litter up to like 12, and so that it's so crazy,
Yeah.
and they're very angry animals, like, they're so territorial, they'll attack anything and everything, and I
Yep.
mean it's just as bad as all those people releasing those boas out into the
Oh, that was
Everglades.
ridiculous. Yeah.
I mean, they're still fighting that. They're paying
They're
people.
gonna be fighting that forever. They're not
Oh,
gonna keep up with it.
well, it's the same thing. What happens when that thing, when it starts shitting out little teeny
What?
snakes?
And it's shitting out like 70 or 80 at a time.
That's just one.
Yeah.
That's just
Well, I
one.
mean, that's the crazy thing is if you go into the glades now, no rabbits, no raccoons, no possums, like all the small game is gone.
I watched a dude. He's his. I told you about this last time. I think his thing is deer meat for dinner,
Hmm.
and he. I don't know how he came about. He came about, I think, deer meat for dinner. He was doing hunting, and then he started fishing, I think, and he started doing this catch, clean, and cook. And I think the fishing thing, catch, clean, and cook thing, really just went through the
Took
roof.
off.
And so that's kind of like you don't see him hunt too much. But now that he's made this a success, they've built this crazy property in the Everglades, and they have tons of property. And they're harvesting all kinds of things all the time. And he even had this guy in there that has like no arms, no legs, and he was shooting hogs. But
You've never seen anything like. So when I was living down there, there was a place about
in
15 minutes south of where I was.
in
It was,
Florida,
yep, it was a private farm. They had like, I think they had about 700 acres. But the only facing property that wasn't swamp forest was literally the front of this farm and the couple of fields that they had doing strawberries. And then behind it, everything was just, it was swampland. It was all like lowland marsh.
yeah.
Dude, if you could get in with them, they already had blinds set on the property at all the major junction points for the hogs. They didn't have to bait, they didn't have to do anything. The property was inundated with hogs. Like
Yeah.
if you went out there in a season
What the hell are
and
they
took,
eating? They're herbivores.
dude, they're omnivores. They eat everything.
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 And when I tell you, if they get into a field,
Do they
you
have
can,
tusks?
yes,
Yeah.
and you
They're
can
bad
kiss
news.
that field goodbye because they will shred it in a matter of a day or two.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we were in there the one day, we were just kind of spotting, and we went into one of the blinds. And we're sitting in the blind for maybe 30 minutes. And I mean, hogs are smart, dude. If they smell you, you're done. Like they're
Oh yeah. Yeah.
so we're sitting in the
Well, it's where they
blind.
live.
Yeah,
If a white-tailed buck runs in your back door or your front door, you'll know what's up. Yeah.
we're sitting in the blind and we can hear movement behind us coming through the brush. and like three or four little ones come out, and a sow comes out, and then another sow comes out, and they're kind of walking off to the side, and then we're sitting there, we hear just a shitload of movement behind us, and like some snorting,
You don't even want to be
and
on the
then
ground.
pawing at the door. Oh yeah, we're on the ground.
Well, you don't even want to be like.
Oh, tell me
I'd be
about it,
like, get me
because
up, get me up.
this thing was within 10 feet of the blind that we were in. And the cat that I was in there with is like, shut up, don't move, and keep your hand on your handgun. He's like, because if that thing turns, you're gonna want to start shooting. I'm like, no, okay. He's like, I've lost about 10 dogs in here over the years. I'm like, are you shitting me? He's like, no, they get killed all the time.
Yeah, no bueno, no bueno. I'm sure it's good eating because they're tough little sons of bitches. But all of it, I mean, this is what we keep hitting or hinting around it or upon it. But literally, I mean, it's like going back to like because the shit show that we're facing right now, it's it's almost inevitable. At some point, I don't think it's something we would not see. You know,
So let me ask you, with military background, if the shit hits the fan, who do you think the military is going to back up on this one?
well, what do you mean back up?
I mean, do you think we're going to be dealing with? So let's say, because I mean, we can see the National Guard tends to be a shit show with most of this stuff when they get deployed. They just don't necessarily have the same level of experience, training, whatever you want to call it. But if this comes down to a situation where, because I mean, if you look at it right now in some of these cities, you're basically looking at like Black Lives Matter and Antifa and these outside organizations that are inciting violence for, I mean, it's plain as day when you look at it. The question is, if the shit actually hits the fan and you got civilians going against each other, what do you think the response of the military is going to end up being? Because I think it's very difficult to force them to do anything against their own citizens.
Well, there's a fine line between, like if per se that was something that ever should come to fruition, I would like to think that with them having central database, they would at least show some courtesy to the people that sign their name on a piece of paper. First and foremost. Secondly, I don't know that you can do that because when you get into pandemonium, it's a it and it's a becomes a free for all. First of all, you're not going to turn. You can only go so far and turn in this day and age and turn a certain group of people against another group of people because there's a group of people that aren't saying shit right now. They're not saying shit. They're not doing shit. They're just sitting back watching shit happen. And nobody realizes how many of those people there are sitting behind technological media and looking at this and looking at that, just going, yeah, we've seen it before. We'll see it again. If you, not you, if somebody starts to piss with those people, you're going to see some really bad shit happen. And it's not going to matter what the media thinks at that point because it'll happen to them too because they're
Well,
doing
they're
just as much
absolutely complicit.
injustice.
Absolutely.
It's I mean I know it will never I shouldn't say never. If something starts to happen that it's so bad that nobody can fix it, and it's just becoming so rampant that it's just taking over areas and cities, whatever. I don't see that happening, but it's definitely possible. If that, I know exactly what I will be doing and what my plan will be, and who's going to be beside me and who I'm going to be beside. But at the same rate, um, we want to talk about the National Guard. If something comes to a civil level in this country, you won't see the National Guard.
You don't think?
No, no. Um, Here's the deal. Um, I would never show any disrespect to them or for them for all the obvious reasons. Um, they do things that a lot of us, you know, if you're an active duty person, they do a lot of things that you would just not want to do. But
Right.
when it's time for us to play, we're going to do the things that all of them don't want to do, you know. So there's a little bit of a trade off. So I this isn't a stereotypical statement, which it could definitely be misconstrued as that. But when we were training in Southern Virginia for infantry training, which we had to do every year, a certain amount of time, every I think quarter probably. Um, I saw a lot of those guys that were in the reserves or National Guard, whichever it may be. I can tell you this: if I had to run away from that dude, one of them dudes, they ain't catching me. I know that. And so, what I'm saying is that when you live the military life 24/7, even though on Friday night you're drinking 24 beers, like when the shit hits a fan and like you're like you get that shell shock, like shit just like you snap too, like and you're like it's almost like a you shut your body has been trained to push that stuff out, you know? Like, oh well I was drinking. Yeah, you've been drinking, but you still have that ability to be like, oh, and it I don't know, like I'm sure like when you're riding motorcycles at 160 miles an
Yeah,
hour.
you don't even have to think about it. You just do it.
Right. So there's a switch that goes in your brain. Like
Yeah.
this is all I can think about right now. All this other stuff, you get trained to the point where you can shut it all off and all right, let's go, let's go, And so when you have guys that go 2 weeks out of a year, 2 weekends a month, or I don't know what it is. It's very rare. It's very few. But they go and do day jobs. They go and do like real life shit. They go and have families and they have kids and they do real people stuff and they go and do that X number, whatever it is. You're not. Again, I hate saying this.
Well, you're not living it.
One moment.
They're
Sorry,
not.
I didn't
They're
quite catch
not.
that. Could you please repeat it?
They're not less sharp. That's not what I'm saying.
Well, it's not as automatic.
Right. It's not right there.
Yeah.
And so what happens, I think, also, like, and that's what they did is they put a lot of those guys into like a lot of these situations for all these riots and stuff. Well, now you got guys that aren't used to running through the woods, pulling the trigger, pulling the trigger, pulling the trigger, pulling the trigger, like so you put them on the front line of something that's pretty drastic. And you give them all these tools to protect themselves. Do they overreact? I don't know. Do they underreact? I don't know that either. And I know literally, dude, when you're in all that riot gear with the face shield and baton, like if you get hit with somebody else's face, that big arm shield,
Mm-hmm.
or you get hit with somebody's baton, that shit hurts. So if we're breaking and we're swinging and we're pulling back, and we're breaking and swinging, I have a problem with that, Matt. I'm gonna hurt somebody that's just trying to speak their voice, right? Don't get me wrong.
There's a difference between
I know
speaking your voice and actively rioting.
we train for it. We train for it all the time because of what had happened in the past in Washington D.C. If there was ever a flood, we were on sandbag duty. If
Right,
there was ever a riot, we're dressed in gear,
right.
And I don't think, back to my original comment, I don't know that our government is doing us any sincere amount of justice by putting the National Guard in at play. I mean,
And I get that.
what if you put active duty guys out there and some of those dudes get in their face? You know what's going to happen?
Yep. I know exactly what's gonna
There,
happen.
you'll get your civil war, but you'll
C-
get
d- do you really
lots of
at that
graves.
point in time, do you really call it a civil war? Or is it like
I mean,
an
massacre.
uncivil Friday afternoon? Because it ain't gonna last long.
Oh, dude, I wish. Here's what I wish. I wish for you that before so 99, moving into 99 was when I had my knee injury, and I went into the training room. So roughly about 2 solid years I spent doing marching and funerals and ceremonies and parades and this in front of the White House and that in front of the monument. I wish that you could have been there to hear the conversations that we had.
Oh, I can only imagine because remember, I told you the buddies that I used to run with were all guys that were military before we graduated high school.
Yeah.
And where they were, the group of guys that I ran around with, they were all stationed on the wall in Germany before it came down.
Oh,
And the stories that they told about the shit that used to go on over there and how many of our guys actually died while on post over there was unbelievable. And it was kept extremely quiet because they didn't want escalations of the Cold War.
yeah. Well,
But those guys were animals. The shit that they used to do was insane.
there's a lot of stuff, like there's a lot of things I think after being in DC, roaming them stones every day. Um, I think there's a lot of things that a lot of people don't know about a lot of stuff that's gone on behind the scenes, and
Yeah.
literally like where I'm at today, like we're we're not getting any younger. But how long is it going to take for us as a as a civilization, you know, to really understand that the land is there, like it's providing us with a lot of things, and we're just ridiculously abusing it. Nobody's ever, because there's that constant grind. So I think it starts at the top where they're just taking all this stuff from everybody for no reasons, because they're not putting it back to where it needs to be.
Nope.
I just talked to my friend last night, and I was like, it would be better, and I've told my daughter this, it would be better if they came in and took out all the asphalt from top to bottom and just left it dirt. Because every year after winter comes, they could just bring in one little grader, grade up,
Grade it
grade
down and you're
down,
done.
and walk away. But yet, all they do is they keep coming in and put more hot patch or cold patch, whatever it may be, piling it up, tamping it down with a hand tamper, and then first time they get a little bit of snow, they run the plow up and just rip it all
Rip it
right back
off.
out.
Yep.
So, you know what you're doing to us is you're just increasing our automotive repair bills every year. And it's absolutely ridiculous that we spend all this money just to go work, try to make money, but then it's all taken and put into somebody's pocket because they
They
feel
don't
like,
have to work.
right, and their dick's so small they have to have the brand new Corvette or the brand new Mercedes Benz. Who gives a fuck about how you get to point A to point B? Can you grow a plant in your backyard that can provide food for you? Probably not. Like there's so many things. Like I've just over the past, and I'm so happy for it. We're what 9 months into this year. As shitty as it's been, I learned a whole lot of shit this year. So I'm better off for it.
Right. The problem is you're the type of person that if you have that downtime, you'll figure it out. The the majority of the people that have had that downtime haven't figured out shit.
Well, they're breaking down.
And that's not, I mean, what we're really seeing is, I think we're seeing more of a gap created. And I
Hmm.
don't necessarily think it's a gap that has to do with race or economy or anything else. What I think we're seeing is a gap being created between the people that just want to be left the fuck alone and not told what to do, and the people that want the government to do absolutely everything for them. Because you got to think about it, like with these stimulus checks, and I get it. Um, not
Are
a
they doing them
popular.
again?
Well, no, because the Democrats basically shut it down. But the whole thing is when you really look at the situation, I get the fact that let's just say, okay, I get the fact it's a pandemic, but we have been, I mean, the numbers, the infection rate, the numbers, the death toll, everything is on this fucking sliding scale that we can't get real answers about. It's being completely politicized. And so it's causing even more mistrust of a government that most people don't trust that much anyway, or at least the people that know how to take care of themselves don't trust that much anyway. And what you're seeing is you're seeing people that if they don't have that government tit to feed off of, they have no idea what to do with themselves.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
it's bad.
Well, I'm sure that you have a much higher volume of exposure to a lot of the topics you just brought up because of the density there.
Right.
Um, However, I can tell right off the cuff a lot of things based off what I see. We talked about it before, based on what I used to do and having to go into a situation and get on common ground with somebody in less than 5 minutes. You can pick somebody apart visually by their actions in a
Right.
very small amount of time. You just have to kind of be able.
Observant.
Yeah, well, yeah, but you also have to keep yourself at bay too,
Right.
because some people are shocked the shit out of you. However, I don't disagree with you. There's a wedge that's being driven in between people that are willing to go to work and the people that just want to keep on sucking off of that titty.
Yep.
Now, I don't want to say I disagree with them giving back. I, I I agree with it for a lot of different reasons because for a very, 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 very long time, this country has been sucking the life out of the human race. And I never really realized it until those last few years where I was making some numbers. And then when over 4 years, I looked back and I was like, holy shit. Holy shit, what these people are doing to me. And I signed on that dotted line, which should give me some sort of leniency in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, you get the VA. Shut up.
Smells like a fucking old nursing home, dude.
Oh
And
God.
I'm not, honest to God, like
No, I get it.
I'm one of the most humble people as far as the military is concerned that you'll ever encounter. I don't even call myself a veteran, dude. Like I really don't. I don't feel as though, since my job was to go and defend the country and kill people, and I never did it. I just sat in a cemetery. I don't feel like I don't feel like I deserve
And
that title.
listen, I get what you're saying, but it doesn't matter. You still wore the uniform.
Right. So, anyways,
You still took the time to commit.
there's this constant um, separation, and it's like a constant hierarchy of social status. And
Yep.
realistically speaking, I don't feel as though it's something that needs to exist. I really
Well,
don't.
let me
I
explain.
get the
Hold on.
uneducated part of things,
Yep.
right? I get that, but ultimately, it almost yields to a perspective that nobody really wants to go
Hold
and
on,
read.
because you're saying that nobody wants to.
No, but I haven't thrown in that punchline. There's Society started with lords and serfs for a reason.
No, no, no. Society started in the cave. Everything was tribal. It was all clans, and it
Right.
was basically you get with people so you can survive because it's easier to survive in that clan than as an individual.
But we're talking in an era where we're expecting that some people have brain matter and some people can use it.
Yeah, but you've already fucked the expectation up because we already know that's not true.
Well, I realize that, but all I'm saying is that where things really began to form into some semblance of a society was when they started to have actual homes. They could defend themselves, and you still had this hierarchy of I'm better, I'm here, you're here, you live outside the castle and you tend to the crops and you live in a haystack, whatever it was we could muster so that you guys had some place to stay. So there's always going to be that disconnect because that's the way that things were brought about. And realistically, in my perspective, none of that needs to exist. Somebody does need to be able to be in charge to make good decision, but why not do it on a committee level where lots of people are in charge? Or
Because the more people making the decision, the more opportunity you're putting in that everyone's going to want something different. And that's the problem. And when you look at it, strong societies throughout history have always had strong leadership throughout history. This whole democracy thing that we're doing, this whole experiment with democracy being the leading principle of our, constitutional republic. Democracies rise and fall. They're not a long standing form of government for a reason, because the democracy does not necessarily benefit the majority. And the more you start allowing the democracy to focus on special interest, on small minority um, groups that have, that for one reason or another want special privileges, interests, attention, whatever the case may be, where you begin to take away from the contributions of the majority, that's a problem. I mean, you see it right now in the difference between the red states and the blue states,
Well, that's just bullshit too,
but
right?
it's not
But this
because it's
this is my point. We realize and recognize that so many years of we're so much more advanced than all that shit that all this was devised upon. And hold on.
bless you.
Thank you. Given the fact that it was in the 30s or 20s or 40s, whatever the fuck it might have been, right now we can talk through this.
That doesn't make us any better. That does not make us any more evolved.
No, it makes us worse.
Yep.
The big D isn't working, the big R isn't working. So why is it that we can't have some new blood in there that's not incapable of putting sentences together,
Well,
incapable of telling everybody about how bad they suck, and get somebody that is more apt to be like, hey, how about this? How about we all just try to get along? And
because that's bullshit. Let's be honest. That's
why
bullshit.
is it bullshit?
Because human nature is not about getting along.
That's what we
There has
need.
been
We
there
need to make that change and start to
That's good.
do
Let's all sit
things.
back and sing Kumbaya and wait for utopia to happen. It's not going to happen. Yeah, fucking lib. No,
No, I'm not.
I
No, I'm
know you're
not.
not. I'm just being a smartass. But
But
listen,
literally, like,
it doesn't happen like that, dude.
do you have
Tribes
a
have been.
garden?
Do I have a garden? No. Could I
No.
have a garden? Absolutely.
Well, why don't you?
Because I'm in a condo and I don't feel like buying the little hanging garden shit that we talked about and putting it on my patio because we didn't have that much space to begin with. Now, when we get out of here and get the house in the mountains, you're damn right I'm going to have a garden, probably close to an acre's worth.
Well, yeah.
Dude, the problem is this. Everything
I'm so
is,
bent right now, Matt.
as much as we want to say, oh, everyone needs to just get along, that is not human nature. There's the only time that we team up and get along is when confronted by an outside threat
Somebody
where
flies planes into buildings.
that's exactly it.
That lasted for like a day.
Well, that's
Everybody had a boner for the
because we
United
got the
States.
attention span of fucking gnats. These
We
people
don't.
we do. Well, we don't, but the vast majority
Yeah.
unfortunately
Well,
do.
that's what I was getting at. Like that's the point that I was getting at in starting that conversation is that we're don't don't take this the wrong way, and I might be just throwing shit at the wall and see what sticks, but if you go back far enough, there's always this hierarchy, and I feel as though be, this is so bad. Maybe I shouldn't even do it. There's everybody has the ability to procreate. Not
Right.
everybody should.
Agreed.
Not everybody should.
Agreed. But do you realize why everybody is now allowed to procreate? Because we've moved so far away from the natural order that the only ones that got to procreate back then were the ones that were strong enough to gain some sort of control and prove that they were an alpha, and then mate with the strongest female to increase the capability of the species. We didn't let the genetic lottery losers breed because
Well,
they were not allowed. They were at the edge of the tribe. I mean, you got to be honest about it. The people that can't, so red state,
Well,
blue state.
being honest is one thing. What I wasn't trying to do was be stereotypical.
I'm not.
And
I'm not trying to be
no,
stereotypical.
no, I'm not saying you are. I was in different in a different world. I'd have a different conversation, and so like I'm biting my tongue a lot in saying that, like, because there's a lot I'm leaving out because I haven't gotten there yet. But where things are going, if it doesn't get better, you're going, and it's this is even more terrible to say because this is what he wanted, and he's almost on the verge of getting it. Charlie Manson wanted to have this war where all these certain people were out there going crazy thinking that they're running the show, and then out he emerges because he always looked at the intellect of these certain groups. And this is what scares me right now, is that
Manson's
this is
thinking
all
was, yeah.
happening, and
Well,
this wedge is just getting wider and
it
wider
is.
and wider and wider because they are not looking at things holistically because they don't have the ability to.
Well, hold on. So what you make a great point. The difference is Manson cut everything along racial lines. Okay? That was the whole thing. He was going to start a race war, which
No,
he if you listen to the whole story, he was going to start a race war,
I read every
which
book known to
okay,
man.
so then the race war intention for him was that the blacks would win the race war, but they would not be able to self-govern, so they would look to the whites that had taken their side, and then the whites
He
would
took
basically
his
put
whole
them back
he
into slavery.
he was going to take his whole clan into the
Right.
side of a mountain in a
Right.
cave, and they would wait out the war.
Right. So here's the difference. Now, this has nothing to do with race anymore. Yeah, the media may portray it that way, but what you have is
He's authority.
you
It's
you
authority.
have it's a combination of things. It is authority, I agree, but this is a combination of people that have actually learned to think for themselves and
But still,
rationally think.
there's still a fuse missing. There's a fuse
Hold
missing.
on. You
You
have
know
people.
this, Matt. You
I,
know what I'm saying.
what fuse do you think is missing? The fuse that
The
we.
one that says, "Okay, this is I believe this, but I don't know that it's necessarily a good idea to go run out in the streets."
Well, there's not a fuse missing. This is what they've been taught. Jason, so let me explain something to you.
Right.
Over the course of the last, let's go 2 semesters, so what, 6 months, in watching my girl do her master's degree, we were actually having a discussion last night because I was listening to a lecture that she was forced to listen to. This lecture that she was forced to listen to basically came down to all of these people saying that all of education in this country, public education, private education, all of it, has to be burned down because it is all white supremacist based. It is all racially biased. They teach out antiquated things like learn math, learn science, learn this, learn that. They don't teach that culture has been weighed against certain groups. They don't teach that the white man has oppressed everyone. They don't teach what they want to be taught. So when you see what they're now telling these teachers to teach these kids, I mean, and we're talking about kindergarten and first grade lessons. They are teaching these kids that anyone that you see that is white is a white supremacist, is not as good as you, has kept you down. That's why you and your parents are in the position that you're in, because your skin color doesn't match theirs. And the only thing this country has ever done is oppressed people that were not white. And this is what they are teaching our kids and have been teaching our kids for literally since the 30s and 40s is when it
Down
started to
there,
change in the career. Dude, it's insane how bad it is. And this is nationwide. This isn't just here. This is not just here. I have looked at the lesson plans that she's had to put together to submit around how they expect her to teach these kids about things like social justice, racial inequality, being part of a marginalized group. It's no longer about learning. In fact, what they have come to now is that science is inherently racist, and that the only sciences that they want taught are critical sciences like race theory, gender studies, things like that
how
that
is that
have
science?
it's not, but this is what they're pushing. This is the
That's
new
like what's that? We that's like
indoctrination.
no, I'm thinking like science. That's like would it be ecology?
No,
No, it would be might be biology, like
it's not
like a
because there's
really
nothing,
like a master's class in biology when
but
it
they're
talked
not
about
because
race
they
and
believe that
ethics or
no.
ethnics.
You're because if you look at what they're teaching in biology now,
I'm trying to categorize it, Matt.
yeah, no,
I
I
get
got you.
it. Like, but it's
Well,
just it's ridiculous that you're saying this.
but I'm watching it every single day. I see the materials that they're teaching her with and the materials that they're recommending that to these school districts that they teach the kids with. It is
Well,
insane.
so it basically that all that's doing is reinforcing all of it.
But do you understand why they want it reinforced? Because if I
No,
create,
that was my whole point in saying what I was saying
I
earlier. It's
know, and it
like
goes exactly to what you were saying.
like I don't understand why. Like everybody wants to have something to bitch about. You know, like
Right. Because
imagine
if
there's
nobody had anything to bitch about and they had to spend their own time taking care of themselves, we wouldn't be looking at all this materialistic shit. We
right,
wouldn't
Matt.
be the nice.
I've seen when I started when I started working at 14, I worked for like $2.16 an hour,
Yep,
bussing tables.
yep.
And when I left that, I went to something ridiculous, like probably less than $6 an hour. But I was stoked that it was more than what I was making. And
Yes, please load that in mid thought.
I was working with women who constantly, like annually, only got like a penny or two raise for busting their asses. And I mean, there's some legitimately hard-working humans in this world, and a lot of people don't know it, and they don't recognize it, and they take and pull people off of a fucking goddamn piece of paper. I've seen it happen because their paper was written better than that person's paper. But that person might have parents that are doctors and nurses, and they paid somebody $1,200 to write that piece of paper for them. So it looks real pretty. Once you get them on the job, they're a fucking total piece of shit. When you got that person over there that has a shitty piece of paper, you would have put him in there. That person will stay with you for the next 35
But
years, and you will
that's
never hear one hide nor hair a bad word come out of their mouth. That's what
that's
the fuck is wrong with this
right.
country.
That's the
That's
difference.
why all
But
these people can't just agree to get along.
that is the difference between hiring based on capability.
The root of all evil is parenting. It's fucking parenting.
Well, And how do you expect, you understand now, you get the fact that I was the last generation, and I mean, you were as well. We were the last generation to actually have a traditional two-parent household that was still the norm. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. How many, think about it. How many people did you go to
They
school
put up
with?
with it. They put up with it.
Well, no, it's not even that. It was
Yeah,
a
they did.
different, again,
Tons of them people put up with it. You know why they put up with it? They put up with it for their kids
well, and
because
it's,
that's what they were taught.
there's
There
that,
was no divorce.
agreed. But the other thing was, when you made a commitment, you stuck to your commitment.
That's how I was raised.
That's how I was raised.
I knew 2 weeks into being in Fort Benning, Georgia, I made a big fucking mistake, and I didn't want to be there at all. But I
But you
also
didn't leave, did you?
recognized, well, I recognized that I was taught when you make a decision, you stick with it, you live it, and get through it. And I got through it, but I firmly believe to this day, if I would have changed and chosen a different route, I probably would have been in war. I might not be here. So it might
Or
be
you
a
might.
little bit of a blessing.
Yeah, or you might. You don't know. But the
No,
thing
I don't
is,
know.
when you look at what the expectations that are being set now for these kids, when we came up, what our parents wanted for us was for us to have it better than they had it coming up. Well, now we
Yeah,
got to, like, our generation is the one that started causing this problem because we went out and had kids, and we didn't turn around and go, okay, you need to work just as hard as we did. You need to do all of these things. You're going to get a crack across the ass if you're being bad. What we did, or what most of them did, was they turned around and, oh, my kid's special. My kid doesn't have to do that. My kid deserves a trophy too. My kid's just as smart as your kid. Why isn't my kid in that program? My daughter wants to wrestle in a male sport. It's one of those things where you look at, it stopped being about, for the overall betterment of us as a society,
yep,
work hard, do these things, and it all became about individual
yep,
achievement
yep.
and individual merit, and everyone has to feel good about themselves, and everyone has to be a doctor, everyone has to be a lawyer, to which I go back to Caddyshack. The world needs ditch diggers too.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
Well,
let's be honest. How many
yeah.
people did we go to school with that went away to college and got degrees, came back and got involved with, got jobs, did this, did that, that literally, and I'm talking people our age, that if you took them out right now and dropped them somewhere, could not take care of themselves.
Oh, uh, let me start rounding them up. I mean, yeah, it's tough. It's a weird thing to look at, a weird thing to see. You know, I just I don't know. I see the way people act a lot of times, and there's nobody thinks about the bigger thing.
Nope. It's short term goals.
Yeah,
It's instant gratification.
but like I don't know. I feel like when we were younger, we definitely were held to a different standard, and I never see it. I never see it in anybody anymore,
It's
man.
because personal responsibility is gone. It's
It's
always somebody else's fault.
yeah. I mean, I learned a long time ago, like no matter what, no matter it seems like no matter what you endeavor on a daily basis, if somebody calls you and says something about your roof, you can't just call somebody and say, "Hey, I got a problem with my roof." Like you have to become an expert at that problem with your roof to know how it's fixed right, to make sure that if you do hire somebody, they do it right. There's no, this is why I'm so flustered anymore, is like I always try to do things that I'm going to do or put my hands on the right way,
Mm-hmm.
just because I don't know it any other way. I don't know shortchanging. I don't
Dude,
know
if
taking
if
shortcuts.
there was a problem with your roof, you think your dad was going to hire somebody, or was he going to get up there and fix it himself?
No, I would have been up there with him. That's what I'm saying. Like, I know my life was hard when I was younger, but it's taught me so
But
much.
but was it hard when you were younger, as compared to, let's say, maybe a
No.
13 or 12 or 11-year-old
Or how
back in
about
the
42?
1700s?
I
Yeah,
mean, right. Even that. Even that.
yeah.
I mean, you know what? I'd take the 1700s over this shit any day.
Oh, don't get me started with that. I
Any day. And then I'll be an archer. Send me back, please,
Yeah,
Outlander.
I am more and more shutting down the technology stuff as much as I have to deal with it on a day-to-day basis for
Well, have
work.
you have you watched Outlander?
No.
This is why I get into it so much, because it is starts in like 1918 to 1930 or something. I don't know, because I've watched 5 seasons twice now, and I'm just kind of I should know it, but she touches rocks and goes back 200 years to 1715 to 1730s, and now she's in Scotland. And I mean, that's how it is. Like, it's real shit, and that's what really gets me is like, and there's not a whole lot about like them going and catching food to eat and all that. It's
So
it's a
the actual realism of what it would have to take to survive.
right, right. There's
I
very few films that can capture that because it's
go really.
immensely difficult.
You want to see a great one about it? Go watch Jeremiah Johnson.
Mm. Wait, what was he?
That was the one with Robert Redford, where he is a
Mm-hmm,
mountain man,
mm-hmm,
comes west from the war,
mm-hmm.
tries to figure out how to live on his own in the frontier.
Well, there is a show about uh, the guy that Leonardo DiCaprio played.
Oh, the one from the Revenant. Yeah, I was listening
Yeah.
to the podcast with that author that wrote it.
Mm-hmm.
Fascinating.
But I watch those things all the time. You know, um, and this is the other thing that bothers me about like the Naked and Afraid or Survivor. But I feel like there's things written into their contract that they
Please, you
can't do.
know there is.
There has to be, because how can you get 20 some people or 3 people that are together on an island that has trees and I'm sure deadfall everywhere? They can't put something together off the ground with all kinds of branches or leaves or nettles or whatever and survive for 21 days. It seems like that would be the easiest thing to do.
Because they're taking idiots and putting them out there. You're not. Are you serious? I mean, let's go and
Dude,
grab.
my first sergeant was out there three
That's.
times.
But this is what I'm telling you. Let's go and take some operator. Even somebody fresh out of SEER school. Okay, let's take some operator,
They did,
or
they
some.
did. There was a black man out there that was
Yeah,
ex special forces and he collapsed.
let them do what they know how to do without
Bro,
telling them how to do it.
yeah, well, there's that thing we don't know. We don't know what they're telling them they
Dude,
can't
that
do.
shit's all scripted. Every bit of it. Every bit of it. I get a buddy that's a producer.
God
The
damn it, Matt.
dude, it's all scripted.
Well, that's what
That's
I'm sitting here saying. Like, I'm thinking, like, dude, if you literally can make a fire with two sticks, rubbing them together, you tell me you can't build a shelter that's 2 to 3 feet off the ground with some overhead coverage so you don't get rained on, and you can't figure out how to build this so that you can sustain your fire all night long. I mean, I don't even, I've never even been through any of these schools, and I'm sure I could wing it. And if it started to rain, I mean, I've been through West Virginia rain, bro. West Virginia rain has got to be goddamn close to fucking Amazon rain,
oh
because
no,
you
you haven't seen,
know
dude. You've
you
seen nothing
dude,
like that until you hit South Florida in the middle of summer when
bro.
it opens up.
Listen, I went whitewater rafting in the New River Gorge
I've
in
been
West
there.
Virginia. At the end of it, they had a keg for us. We floated the keg in like an hour and a half. My girlfriend went and bought another case of beer for us. I put up the tent. I dug a trench all the way around it because I was in military mindset. If it rained, it would wash it away. I dug a 1 foot hole. We put fillets in there. We had baked potatoes in there. And shit was roaring. I could hear that goddamn rain coming from like 2 miles away. It was so unbelievably nasty. It came and fucked up my entire night. We left and went and got a motel that night. Drove to Chimney Rock, North Carolina. Set up camp. Got firewood. Had a fire. We ate. We're gonna wake up next morning and go hike Chimney Rock, which was the last scene of Last of the Mohicans, where
Hmm.
the girl jumped off. Woke up in the morning. Rain again. Fuck this. Drive all the way down from North Carolina through Georgia, Alabama, whatever they were, into Florida. We're at St. Augustine Beach,
Yeah, that's not really Florida, but go ahead.
whatever. We get there, sunny as shit. We take everything out of the car because we've been trapped in rain for the last 3 days. Put it all out there. We're like, oh, everything's going to dry, set up tent. We leave, go to the surf shop. She wanted a new bathing suit. We went to the liquor store. Not even 15 seconds into the fucking surf shop, the worst rain I've ever experienced in my entire life.
Yep.
We went back there and that goddamn tent was nearly flooded.
I'm
Like,
surprised it wasn't gone.
yeah,
There,
shell
there,
shock, dude.
and the crazy thing is when you get south of Fort Myers, where it actually cuts over to the Tropic of Cancer, it gets even crazier. The shit that I've seen down in Naples and then down in Miami or down in the Keys, when that shit lets loose, you've never seen anything like that before. You can be walking and not see 3 feet in front of your face.
Dude, that was like the 3 days I spent in North Carolina. It was, you got up. Well, I got up. I was on the shore at 6:28 for a 6:31 sunrise. Sunny, sunny, sunny. 2 hours of sun. Everybody goes down. Boom. Everybody leaves. 2 hours later, everybody comes back. Boom.
Yep.
Like it was on, off, on, off. Then day two, we went out there and I was like, listen, all I'm taking is this cooler because if this shitstorm happens again, I'm not leaving because it lasts for an hour, hour and a
Yeah.
half, and it's fresh
It's
water. It
gone.
feels
Yeah.
good, and it's gone. So the second day we stayed out the whole day, and it was just rainstorm, sunshine, rainstorm, sunshine. And the rain when it came it just came in such waves. But there's 4 tropical storms in the
Yeah.
Atlantic while we're down there. Are you not going to expect that kind of weather?
Of course.
I mean, you'd have to be a fool, and that's one of the things that we were talking about a lot. And I was like, dude, like we could have like 3 days of complete shit. If we get some time, we got to make the most of it. And that's why I was like, let's
Just do
just hang
something.
at the
Yeah.
beach, because the time that we get that's good is going to be pretty scarce compared to the shit weather we're probably going to get.
Hey, you mentioned Last of the Mohicans in Chimney Rock. Didn't they film a lot of that too at Great Falls in Maryland?
Uh, I don't know, but it's likely. But it was I think the last 20 or 30 seconds was all at
Yeah.
Chimney Rock, where they were along that ledge,
Yep.
and that's when that girl jumped off. But um, previous to that, I don't know because like there were a lot of fall scenes in it, but the fall scenes, there's no place at Chimney Rock, or I'm sorry,
At
Great
Great
Falls
Falls.
that you could walk behind a, a waterfall.
No. No, I'm not talking about that. I think that just a lot of the land scenes around the water, not at the waterfalls, were shot at Great Falls.
I don't know. I don't know. I know that, I mean, once you leave the Virginia side and the Maryland side, on the Maryland side, once you leave, all you have is that old C&O Canal,
Yeah.
except for there's one place where you can go across like some man-made water or walkways that go all the way out to like where it drops 65
60.
feet in
Yeah.
200 yards, I think it is.
Dude,
So
that.
you can walk right out to that edge,
Yep.
but in the summertime, it's so far below you in the summertime that if you go back in the wintertime, you'll just be like, I don't even know how this makes sense. Because I went out there in the wintertime at night on my bike, and I was shining my lights right through like the guardrail or the
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
yeah, right through it, and the water was only like 4 feet below my feet.
Yep.
So like there was while I was still down there, there was nobody had ever really made it over the falls like kayaking. Then one guy did, and he was in like Outside Magazine, and that wasn't enough, so he went back the next year and
Yeah.
tried it again, and the only thing they found was his boat. It's
Yep.
just it's not a place to play. I
No.
mean,
Well, and the size of some of those damn boulders are insane.
yeah, it's like the Marvel guy, like the Rock Man threw up, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, and then so like the trail on the Virginia side that goes up from the Great Falls, Virginia Park is just it's like a two lane like
Right.
4-wheeler trail that I mean it goes all the way up to the next park, but it's I wouldn't see that it would be very advantageous for them to film there. I
I
mean,
don't know. The thing that I thought was cool as shit was the locks that Washington built.
yeah,
That
yeah.
was nuts, man. You're walking along that just going, how the hell did they build this back then?
On the Maryland side,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like the ride that we did, we got a ride all the way down to the Maryland side and got dropped off with gear on bicycles and started riding towards Pittsburgh. It's like 323 miles. So the first day, I think Justin's numbers are different than mine, but we did, he says we did like 40 and then, or 30 and then 50 or whatever. I think all in all, we did somewhere between 80 and 90 miles. And the stuff that you go through we didn't take the time to stop and like
Look. Yeah.
absorb all that stuff
Yep.
because we all took a certain amount of time off. And so with 323 miles to go, you want to gain some ground. But when we got to Hancock, Maryland, Justin was all over his phone saying the rain's coming, the rain's coming. And we spent the night previously on the site next to the river, and the trains were going all night. Like, so you just get ready to fall asleep. And it's like 3 lanes of tracks, so they're going all night long. They're going. It's just like, are you fucking serious? Like somebody stop. But I was so amped to get on my bike the next day. But when we finally stopped, when it was about to piss down on us, it was in Hancock, Maryland, and I was like, if we stop right here, I'll pay for 2 rooms. We get 2 rooms. We go in, we shower, we do all this stuff. We can go down to Pizza Hut. We'll have a pizza or two and beer, and we'll talk about what we want to do tomorrow. Because our next big stop was Cumberland. And once you get to Cumberland, it's all downhill to Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
I said to him, when I got in that shower and that water touched my crotch, I was like, holy fucking shit. It, like, this, just from being on the seat, it burned so bad. So when we were having pizza, I said, if you want to go to Cumberland tomorrow, I'll go. But that's 50 miles. And I can tell you, once we get there, I'm probably not going to be able to ride anymore after that, because my shit's in bad shape right now. But I only rode like 5 times before we went down there.
Yeah.
Which was a big mistake, but there was other things that were complicating the effort. I mean, I know now so much more than I knew getting off of out of that truck and throwing a leg over a bicycle. Like, I know where my body's at. If I was just going to do something chill like that, because literally, dude, like, while you're riding it, it looks like it's uphill, but it's like barely uphill.
Right.
Until you get like up into Maryland.
Right.
It rises a little bit, but literally it's so gradual that you can, if you get in tempo,
you can just keep it going.
Now, mind you, you have 4 bags on your bike, 2 in the front, 2 in the rear. Now you got some weight. Once you get that weight rolling, it's easier to keep it rolling.
Right.
Than it is to try and continue to get it rolling. And so if you can get into an efficient tempo, spin, grind, there was a couple stretches where my little brother and I was like, dude, we're hauling ass right now. He's like, I know. And then we turn around and we're like, fuck. Hit the brakes, wait. All right, we're all together again. So
yeah.
I think there's guys that I've ridden mountain bikes with that have done it in 32 hours. 32 hours with their wife meeting them in certain places.
Yeah.
New clothes, food, water. Because if you get 2 water bottles on your bike, 2 in your jerseys, little bars of food, and you have brand new light set, you can go and turn 8 to 10 hours on a bicycle. Just sit there and just go, that'd be a stretch, right? Water bottle an hour. So if you had 6, you could do 6 hours. Supplements and those Cliff Bars, dude, they're packed with so much energy. They're so hard to eat.
We had a whole closet full of those things. She eats them like they're going out of style after she works out.
Would she just buy them and then doesn't eat them?
No, I'm telling you, she has got a rolling closet filled with those things because she buys them in bulk. She goes through them so much.
Oh, yeah. Well, they're good. They're good. They're just like, when you're as an endurance athlete, you're constantly like breathing so hard
and then trying to eat that chunk of brick.
Yeah, brick. It's like oats and sand.
Yeah. Oh, shit.
Anyhow, there's a there's a lot to be said about a lot of things, dude. But that I enjoyed that because it was like the first time in a long time that like you actually kind of can go out and like kind of get in touch with yourself, you know,
Yeah.
like because there's all that time to think, and the only thing you have to do is pedal.
Well, we're gonna see how well that works again because I just ordered a couple of weighted jump ropes, and the program that I'm doing, I'm gonna do. I'll jump every other day, and on the days I'm not using the ropes, I'll ride.
Well, you just got to go out and take it slow, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, especially I'm telling you, man, if you come down here, you'll see because there are hills all around us, and I mean hills like that. East Hill, like that's an average hill around here.
I mean, West Hill and
Or I'm
Sharon.
sorry, West Hill.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I ride wheelies up it, so that doesn't scare me.
Yeah, except West Hill doesn't have 6 lanes of traffic that you're dealing with at the same time.
No, I know that's the thing. It was crazy. Like I used to go do like I used to do night rides in DC with a 6 pack of Budweiser in my backpack, and but I used to take my friends down there. I'm like, dude, you guys don't know what you're missing, you know? Like grab a backpack, throw a 6 pack in there, and we'll go down to all these little mini parks all through DC. I was like, when you guys see what's going on down here, you'll be shitting your pants, man. And it was those were some of the funnest things I've ever done. Just because you don't know unless you know.
Yeah.
And like that's like the first time that I took my road bike out and I left my base and I went down to Iwo Jima and I crossed over into Georgetown and I went down because you have to kind of like go through M Street and then drop down and then you pick up the road where they go and park to go do their sculling boats. And then that's where that railroad bed starts. And it goes all the way to the Maryland side of Great Falls.
Yeah.
So but halfway between you can stop and climb like 3 sets of stairs. And if you get on that, it goes all the way to Bethesda, Maryland. So I rode that one day and I went all the way out there and all the way back and went back to base. I rode 50 miles that day, all on freaking rails to trails paved paths. You know,
Oh,
I mean, it is what it is. But this is what I'm saying. Like when you take things easy, the biggest thing that can get you into shape, if that's what you want to do, is we call them LSD rides. They're long, slow
long,
distance.
slow distance. Yep.
So you pick, like if you're on a mountain bike, I know that stash is it 2 on the front or 1 on the front?
One on the front. Oh no, it
So
is 2 on the front. It's 2 on the front.
so what I would do, and this is after I read Lance Armstrong's book, It's Not About the Bike,
It's about the blood
which,
doping.
well,
I'm kidding.
no, I know. You could do all the fucking blood
It's
doping that
still
he
not going
ever
to be
did,
him.
and you still
Exactly.
ain't gonna fucking win 7 Tour de France's.
Exactly.
But what I did after that, because Chris Carmichael was training him, and he gave him a brand new way of training for cycling. So I rode constantly. I rode on my small chain ring in the front and my top three in the back. So it was like a 39, 19, 21, and 23. Or it could have been a 21, 23, 25. I don't know. But I would go turn 60, 70 miles on that gear ratio itself. When the road was just too easy, I just coasted and I kept my legs spinning. Just
Right.
keep that you got to keep that pedal stroke. Because
Right.
even though you're not putting an effort, your
It's
body
still, yeah,
still
you're still
metabolizing
exerting.
fat,
Exactly.
and you're basically also you're exercising the left ventricle of your heart, which pushes all the blood back to all your muscles so that you can recover.
Yeah, let's be cautious with that. I've already got a hypertrophic left ventricle from all the
Right.
athletic shit earlier in my life. So,
So again, long, slow distance
yeah.
for you. You gotta, and this is a really hard thing I had to learn a long time ago. My dad's what 68 now, so like 7 or 8 years ago, I went for a mountain bike ride with him, and all I did was just I followed him, and I was like, "What's so cool is that we've been training here since I was 15, and here I am, almost 39 or 40 years old, and we're riding again. You're 62, 60, whatever."
Yeah.
I said, "But here we are," and I was like, once again, I'm riding through this area where I've trained my entire life, and I've still yet to capture how amazingly beautiful it is that we get to ride here. And that's what a lot of people get to picture and see when they go mountain biking. I
Hmm.
don't. I don't. When I go mountain biking, I see a trail and I see only how to conquer it and ride it as fast as I can. And that's such a huge hurdle for me to be able to slow it down and back it down every time I go pedaling. All I ever see is a trail that I want to ride as hard and as fast as I can because it's the only way I know it. It's the only way I love it. You know, it's so hard. Like if you and I went riding, I have to tell myself for like the whole hour leading up to it that this is just for us to go and have a good time together and just ride. Like I I can't tell you how many I've gone up there to that place. I went with my two friends who are both animals, and I was like, "Listen, guys, I haven't been riding. Please, if you can, just take it easy on me today." And we get out there, and as soon as we leave the gravel road, and it's just a little Y, you're just riding this gravel road, and it Y's off, and the trail goes that way. As soon as my tires hit that dirt off of that road, it was like, it's over. It's over. Like I would just get this, like this blood curdling rush through my veins that I have to turn it up. You know what I mean? And even we got back to the car that day, and they're like, "I thought you wanted us to take it easy on you." I was like, "Yeah, yeah." He's like, "Well, do you realize what you just put us through?" I was like, "Oh my god, dude! Like, holy shit! Like, it never, it's so instinctive for me, Matt. Like, you know, like how hard would it be for you to ride the speed limit everywhere you went on a crotch rocket?"
Yeah, that doesn't happen ever.
Yeah, yeah. So, anyways, I bailed out of riding today too. I just being in the heat, climbing ladders all day. I was like, I'm done.
Yeah,
I'm
I was at my desk on with clients for almost 11 and a half hours today.
wow. Right there.
You got it.
What is exactly you guys do in IT and security?
Oh, we're not going to talk about that, but it's all security. It's all
Yeah,
cybersecurity.
yeah.
I don't want to talk about that shit because I want to forget that I do it most days.
Well, it's kind of something that's pretty cool. Like I have this thing. Like when I open up a new Google page right now, it's going straight up and putting this Yahoo thing at the head of my browser bar.
That would be because you got some malware on there, sir.
And I scanned this goddamn thing.
Scan away.
Huh?
APT.
What do you mean
Advanced
APT?
Persistent Threat.
So what's the the security solution these days. I used to recommend Malwarebytes or Security Essentials to everybody.
Do you mean for like for your desktop stuff?
Yeah.
I'm running Bitdefender.
Do you pay for that?
Mm-hmm.
How much?
I think I'm paying like maybe 50, $60 a year, and it covers like 5 systems.
Bitdefender.
Yeah,
Because Security Essentials was supposed to come without our
dude, half of that
MS10
shit is so it's
main
garbage.
Selenium.
Yeah, it's garbage.
But Security Essentials was doing because we were
Why am I looking at your shoe? Get your shoe away from the camera.
um, we sold McAfee for a while, but it
Oh,
was
I'm
such a
sorry.
mm, you don't even have to go there. I was such a I stopped talking about it, to be honest with you, for a while. Even though they pushed it on us, I was like, the vast majority of these people are all trying to save money. The other majority of these people do not want to spend the money to upgrade their server. And you want me to wholeheartedly convince them to go to a McAfee antivirus and host it on their server when it's running, oh, I don't know, let's think of a number. Let's think of a number like, is it 1024 megabits of RAM, or is it 512, or is it, I was like, are you fucking serious? If you put fucking McAfee on there, they can't function as a fucking business.
We believe
We'll
me when I
sell them a
tell you.
server. We'll sell them a server. Okay. Well, you guys won't work with me on shit. You won't work with me on installations. You won't work with me on pricing. You won't work with me on anything. So you tell me, how am I going to look this guy in the face and tell him that he needs to spend $7,000 right now? Because if not, everything that he has within inside those four walls is compromised.
Oh, that's how you exactly how you tell them.
Well, I've had to figure it out, Matt. I had to figure out how to talk to these guys and make them understand. You know what my best description of why they needed to do this was? You'll love this. I said, imagine for 1 second. You know, I mean, I tuned this to a Chevy dealer or a Ford dealer, but this is the only way they could fucking understand it. I said to a Chevy dealer, imagine if I brought you my 2000 Corvette and you put in a brand new LS1 engine, but you left in that shitty ass fucking carburetor, that shitty ass air filter, that shitty ass oil filters, and I'm paying you 40 grand to upgrade my Corvette so it runs like a 2015, 14, whatever, 612. When I pick that car up and it's going, what do you think I'm going to do? I'm going to come back in there. I'm going to raise hell. So here's what I'm telling you right now. If you don't do this, and this, you can put that $2,500 server in there. But if you don't spend the extra $1,500 to get these switches and these routers squared away, you'll never get the full effect of what you are paying for. And it's only a couple $100. You've got to talk to this guy and let him understand that when you put $10,000 engine into your goddamn Corvette, you're gonna put whatever K&N. You're gonna spend $200 for it, whatever DC, whatever. And that was you had to really figure out a way to talk to them in a language that they understood, and then it was over. It was over.
Yeah, the difference now is I mean obviously I've been doing this for a very long time at this point in time.
Yeah,
And so I tend to be fairly abrupt
yeah,
in
you have to.
to the point of, sometimes I piss them off, but I'm honest with them about it. So I will tend to say, like, if because we get a lot of pushback on, oh, we already have a tool that kind of does that, or
Heard them all. I've heard them
yeah, I
all.
mean, you run the gamut. To which I reply, if you actually were able to do that for yourself, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now.
And then 1 week later, they're like, "Oh my God, we just got hit with ransomware,
Well, to
and
which I
and
to which I
they
turn
want."
around before it ever gets to that point, and I turn around and tell them, you can either work with us and get this integrated now, or I'll talk to you after you have paid the ransom and your company is all over the news, and then it's just going to cost you more. So you decide which way you want to do it.
Yeah, clearly you're dealing with a much bigger environment. I mean, I shouldn't say it that way, but the we have a shit ton of people all over the place. I had 4 stores, way more than that. It's, it's such a that's such a long and lengthy conversation, dude.
Yeah, I don't
Like,
even, like I said, I try not to talk about it just because, you know,
I
obviously
loved
my
it. No, I know. I loved it. I loved it because there was a lot of people that depended upon me. They depended upon me because they knew I was going to get shit done for them. So when they called, like, I didn't say like, "All right, well, I'll get back to you." Like I said, "I'm on it. I will talk to you very soon." And I got up out of my chair and I started running around talking to people because that's in that world.
you got to
That's
get
how
it
that
done.
world functions.
Yep.
When their world breaks down, they're not calling you a half an hour in advance because they know that it's going to break down. They're calling you right now because their world is
Already
breaking
under the
down.
gun. Yep.
And so when you can, there's a sense of gratification when you can solve people's issues and get it resolved and get it fixed for them and they're up and running. The falsities that I have in my own head was that I actually thought that I had people that genuinely gave a shit about me because I helped them out. No, no.
No.
They were looking for a means to an end, and I was that, and they knew I was, and I allowed that to get to my head, and I also was allowing them to utilize me on a 24/7 basis. I mean, I was talking to people in
Yeah,
Japan.
I know what I will tolerate and what I won't. I keep it, very professional as far as what I will do and what I won't.
Mm-hmm.
But I make no bones about it. I know that when I drop dead, there's not going to be any sense of, oh my God, what have we lost? My job will be posted before I'm in the ground.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like I didn't realize that part of things, but and it's probably good that I didn't because it allowed me to be that much better of an employee, and so I know that all the money I made in those 10 years, I earned every penny of it.
No,
I
don't get
earned
me
every
wrong.
bit of it.
I've earned every penny of what I do, but I also am the type of person that has to get told by my immediate manager and, some of the ones above him, when you're having that conversation with the CEO or the CIO or somebody like that, you can't be that blunt. And I'm like, well, if I was in that role, I would expect someone like me to be that blunt. So that's,
Yeah, that's what got me. I think that's what got me. I think that's what got me, dude. I just I wasn't gonna bite my tongue. I wasn't raised that way, and I wasn't trained that way. And when I see something wrong, I'm gonna tell you it's wrong. But I do my job. I did my job better than a lot of people will ever do it. But it's shitty, man. It's so shit. And I, well, on my way out, when I talked to one of um, my customers, she's like, you, I don't think you understand like where all this is going now. These young kids, like, they don't give a shit about you. They don't give a shit about if you have one kid or seven kids, you have a house. They said, here's what they want. That's what they want. And that's what they're going to get. No matter who or what is in front of that goal, they're going to get it. And if they have to undercut you at the knees, they're going to undercut you at the waist.
The difference in that is the fact that it might have been like that for a while, where these young ones that were coming out were just killers. I mean, very sharp, very driven, but that generation did not last long
Oh, it burns out. Has
because
to burn
what
out.
what you now see are the ones that are coming out that are with what they know, they're pretty intelligent with it. But what they know could fit on my thumb as compared to what they don't know. And they're too ignorant to understand that they don't know what they don't know. And they come in like I've had to interview, and I literally have had people in these interviews come in and be like, "Well, I've got a degree in XYZ, so I won't accept anything other than, a management role or a director type role." And I'm like, you can barely figure out how to wipe your own ass at this point in time. You have zero experience whatsoever. Uh, I don't care that you don't want to work before 10 a.m. I don't care that you have a yoga schedule and this is when your dog has to be walked. Like, suck a fat dick. That's not going to work in this environment. And the scary thing is, some of the companies that I worked with, their HR departments were actually doing things to actively engage with Gen Z, the millennials, and with Gen Z by changing up their business practices. Oh, we've got to go to a we've got to offer virtual workforce so that they can be home. We've got to do this, we've got to offer all these other things to be able to attract this new talent. But what they started quickly finding out is this new talent is talent in name only. Because when you put them
It's
into
on
those
paper.
situations, yeah,
It's
it's
on paper.
all on paper. And the
Dude.
crazy thing is, when
Oh,
they don't know how to do something, there is no drive to try to overcome and figure it out. It's like, oh, I can't do that. Have somebody else do it.
right. What is that?
It's a generation of kids that didn't get beat. That's what it
Well,
is.
they say that there's also this massive issue with like these coders and developers, right? Like they know what they have to get done tomorrow, but they know that if they crunch it out, they get it done in like
3
3
hours.
hours.
Hmm.
But then they have to worry about what they're going to do for the next five.
Yeah, we had that conversation. It's amazing to watch people work.
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
listen. You know what I put it back to, and I don't know if you did this like we did or not. Did you work in the mill?
no,
Okay. So one of the things that you learned very quickly, you were talking about the jobs that you had up there making two something an hour, three something an hour, right?
yeah,
So imagine this: a bunch of us, because you had to know somebody, got into the mill. And so senior year, summer of senior year, maybe while you were in college, you'd come home during the summer. You get picked up on as a green hat, you'd go work in one of the mills. So I worked at one for 2 years in the summers, and at 18 years old, there's no reason you should be making like I was pulling in 26.50 an hour plus bonuses depending on what we were doing, And a lot of the times, like if I wasn't working a specific job that unfortunately I was very good at, so I got stuck on, which was really dangerous but very profitable, you'd get days where you'd be on a cleaning crew and they're like, go clean this area of the mill.
It's
And
just sweeping
you learn very quickly how to sweep a pile of dirt from one
all
side of the
day.
room to the other for 8 hours and get paid $26 an hour to do it.
I know. I know. Shit, when I was in the military, they put us on the Army 10 miler, which starts at the Pentagon and goes through the city and comes back. And we quickly learned that, like, while they were setting up on the north parking lot and the south parking lot, that there was like a walkway in between. It's like a half mile long. So we learned that we could start walking with a group of people going this way, and we'd pick up a group going that way, and we just turn and we do the same thing for like 6 hours. We just walk that that whole walkway back and forth until somebody was like, "Hey, but what are you going to do to us? You know, nobody wants to be here. You know, we don't want to be here. You don't even want to be here. So are you really going to be that punishable for us? No. He's going to tell us to go find something to do. All right, well, we'll
Yeah,
go down there and find the next crew that's a quarter mile away from you, and you don't see it. By the time we get down here, you'll be gone, and we'll be doing the same thing again.
right.
Hopefully, you don't
Nah,
miss the bus going back, you know?
but you know what, dude? In all honesty, that becomes the problem because you learn
It's totally the
how to
problem.
do as little as possible to just get by.
Right. Fortunately for me, going in there already at 23 years old, I already knew how to work hard,
Yeah,
you know, and this is, you go back to the basic training thing we talked about last time. When you got rounds going over your head and you're trained in the infantry and they got you putting up fucking snow fence, you're like,
why am I doing
really?
this? Yeah,
But yet I see how many hundreds of people that are down here from my base and that base in that base that don't have the job that I have in that cemetery or
right.
weren't trained to do the things that I was trained to do. Why don't you tell that guy that is just in charge of making sure the ammo's in the closet? Why don't you tell him to go put up that snow fence? It don't work like that,
No,
because you don't know in that quarter mile whether you're going to run into a colonel or a staff sergeant.
right.
So we were gambling, but we were gambling because that's how it works, man. You know. And if you were in some foreign country, you'd be doing the same goddamn thing because you don't want to be going switching out god fucking outhouses or cleaning up dirty buckets of food from chow or whatever. There's always something that nobody wants to do in the military. But it's the nature of the beast. It's the nature, that's actually human nature. We live by the path of least resistance.
Yep.
And if you don't, you're probably somewhat more successful than everybody else. But at the same rate,
How are you measuring that success?
right, right. Is it because the car you drive? Or is it because you don't get free coffee at the convenience store in the morning? I don't know. Like, it's crazy when you think about all this shit and where is it all going? You know, how many more of these generations are going to happen before it gets really out of control?
I don't know. I'm
There's
hoping that
another.
maybe we can sterilize a bunch of them and put an end to it.
Well, if it's chlorine in the fucking gene pool.
Oh God.
Yeah,
All right, brother.
I sense it.
That's a good one.
It sure is.
That's a good one.
You got it.
So, all right, man. Till the next
Alrighty,
time.
and then.
All right. Okay, I stopped.